What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday, and today we are going to be comparing the Fanstoys Pheonix with the Takara Tomy recently released masterpiece Jetfire Skyfire. This has been a long time coming, and I'm going to give my predictions today before I do this one, because I do have a prediction. My prediction is that Fanstoys wins, because I think it has some categories stacked against Takara that Takara usually has stacked against Fanstoys, so that's my prediction. I'm not sure if it's going to turn out that way or not. Before we get started, you have to know that, I use the Sunbow chart for scaling and stuff. I have to have some sort of point of reference to use against it. I know it's not accurate. All that stuff is in the eye of the beholder. And we'll take a look back and do the matrix at the end of this as well, regardless of who wins, to kind of give you a more well-rounded idea of my thoughts on the kind of clear and present winner. But truthfully, you guys should be using the verses as like a blueprint to map out what you're looking for in your collection to make the best decision for yourself. It's not about what is the ultimate best, although there's always a winner, right? It ain't first, you're last. I don't think I have any housekeeping to do. Once again, if you want to see more Sit Down Saturdays, because this is probably going to be the last one here for a while, because I don't know of any other verses coming soon. They're all on Patreon at the $5 level. Ask anybody in the comments if it's worth it. They'll tell you that there's plenty of content. I've had people leave due to too much content to consume, never due to lack of content. And we got some fun stuff lined up for April. So with that, let's go ahead and get started, and you know where we start. And we'll start with accessories, and Takara takes it here. Fanstoys comes with the gun, obviously, so does Takara. Fanstoys comes with, the different eyes, I believe, was it? That blue piece. And then they came with the chest swap out pieces and the adapter for a flight stand. Takara comes with the whole flight stand, the chest pieces as well, 3 different faces, the blast effects, and the little figures, so it's really a cut and dry thing there. As far as gimmicks go, I don't really feel like they have a whole lot of difference there. I think I have to give it to Takara because of the opening of the head for all of the sort of circuitry going on behind the helmet, but the rest of it they kind of tie out. But I think ultimately Takara takes it by a smidge. Moving on to the build and materials. For materials, I'm going to tie them out. Both the plastics feel fine. They both incorporate die cast. They both have translucent plastics. I don't think there's anything significant about the materials with one over the other. As for the build, once again, I'm going to tie them out, but not because they are both great, but because they're both good, but they both have a couple issues. There's some joints that are particularly squeaky on the Fanstoys, always have been. The ankles in particular were murder. I'm sure you'll hear it when we go through the articulation. Whereas the Takara, I talked about this a bit in the review. I'm not crazy about some of the limit and screws that they use, and I never really use that, but it does have a tendency for panels to start pulling themselves apart. They just need a little bit of extra sturdiness. If you don't agree with that take, I have other things. The slider and the shoulder that connects to the chest doesn't really lock or stay in. It moves a little too loosely. As a result, it creates frustration. So I think they're both decently built, but I don't think neither of them are perfect, so I'm tying them out for that as well. Moving on to hardware, I gotta give the point to Takara. It just has more ratchets in it. It has shoulder ratchets outward and around. I think the Fanstoys does as well. It has hip ratchets outward and forward. The Fanstoys does not. They both have ratchets in the knees, and Takara even has ratchets in the ankles. Just has more hardware. Moving on with the full frontal, so to speak, I think it goes to Fanstoys, man. I don't like the kind of slant or angle that the chest takes off of the collarbone down to where the shoulders sit on the Takara. I think it makes him look dumpy, whereas I think the Fanstoys, while looking less cartoon accurate, which is going to be its own category later on, which I'm sure Takara will take. Since Fanstoys does not go the cartoon accurate route, it ends up looking better, more heroic, etc., etc. And that's going to be a repeating theme and factor during the course of the sculpt breakdown. As for paint, the Takara has more paint. Now, I know the Fanstoys put out the premium one later. If you want to compare that in your own notes later on down the line, that's fine. I don't have that one. I wasn't going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe. So I can only compare the one that I have with the one that's sitting in front of you. And as a result, the paint overall is going to go to Takara. Even though I like some things better about the paint with Fanstoys, and I'll point that out as we go through, I can't deny the fact that Takara just has blatantly more. Moving on to the head, I just think Fanstoys has a better sculpted face. It's not as toon accurate, but I think it's a better sculpted face. The dimensions of the face look better. The helmet looks more like a helmet and less like part of the head. Like it looks like something going over top of the head. It also has a little extra couple details, a little silver bits on the side earpieces. Once again, not toon accurate, but that's what makes it look better to me. I don't like the face on the Takara. I don't think it looks good. Subjective, but I gotta call it. From the side, once again, it's pretty much the exact same thing. Comes down to proportions. It comes down to what I think looks cooler. more intimidating, more imposing, more mature, more sophisticated. And that's not what the Takara is going for, so it's not a knock against the Takara. I just think the sculpt work is better. Moving on to the chest torso area, I think the Fanstoys looks better. Those gaps in the Takara are not aesthetically pleasing to me between the chest panels and like the sternum area or the center of the chest. Once again, the Fanstoys takes side steps away from the cartoon, getting away from that cartoon accuracy, and adds extra panel line work around the canopy in numerous places and around the chest. Fanstoys also goes and paints accents on the chest, making it pop a lot more than just the blank cartoon accurate Takara. You guys know I'm not normally a fan of translucent plastic, specifically on Masterpiece, but I've always been a fan of the Jetfire's chrome underneath coming through that translucent, which I do think looks striking. They do the same thing with the red. It works to a lesser degree, but they do it there as well. But yeah, I just think that there's more that went into the Fanstoys. Now from the side, I kind of think it's a tie. I think that the Takara one has a couple little odds and ends to it, but I think the Fanstoys does as well. I don't think there's as much a clear winner. But because Fanstoys takes the front, they're going to take the category in general. For the arms from the front, I think it's a wash. They're almost identical. I do like the little extra sculpted detail in the shoulder on the Fanstoys, but it's not enough to give them a point. There's just not a big enough gap there. I'm sorry. So I'm tying them out from the front. They're so bloody close. From the side, it goes to Fanstoys. I like the red stripe better. The hands look more purposeful. They look like proper working hands as opposed to like these weird crab claw hands. I like the bump out between the shoulder and the bicep. I like the extra sculpted little silver painted details. It's just more to it, man. Once again, because it gets away from that cartoon model. Just enough to look a little bit more visually interesting. As for the pelvis, I'm going to tie them out. I think the Fanstoys has a more clearly defined pelvis, mainly due to the break in the nose cone. I also like you can see all the sculpted detail underneath the red panels. However, the Takara hides the joints, which has to be acknowledged. And it does look better in that area. So I'm going to tie them out. From the side, I actually think the sculpt on the Fanstoys is more purposeful in general. But aside from that, that little red accent goes a long way, getting away from the cartoon model, but adding some flair. So I'm giving the side to Fanstoys, which gives the pelvis to Fanstoys. Looking at the legs, the thighs go to Fanstoys. I don't even think it's up for debate. They're just more interesting looking. Now, the lower legs, I'm going to tie them out because there's not a whole lot of difference in sculpted detail, but the knees on the Takara look cleaner and more purposeful. But all the inside work that you may not be able to see here on the Fanstoys is really significant and helps the figure a ton. So I'm going to tie out the lower legs from the frontal view, giving the thighs to Fanstoys. From the side, I'm giving the whole thing to Fanstoys. The vents look better than the straight block on the side of the leg. There's extra sculpted detail on the side of the thigh that's not there in the Takara. Just looks more interesting. It's a very similar trope through the whole thing, is the Fanstoys just looks more interesting to me. Now, from the back, I think the wings look better on the Takara. It's also a smarter way they got there. I think the backpacks look about equal overall. The back of the arms look better on the Fanstoys because they have those vents sculpted in. The back of the legs look more interesting. One, because of the release buttons. They look good. I mean, I can't give them a tie, man. That's gotta go to Fanstoys. It's just like, it's 2-1. I gotta give it 2-1 Fanstoys. The arms look better from the back. The legs look better from the back. The backpack overall probably looks better on the Takara. That's 2-1 Fanstoys. That's the only way to be fair. So, I mean, we have a wipeout here. The Fanstoys head looks better. It has more detail. It has more paint. It also looks more serious. The chest looks better. It's more cohesive. It's more put together, and the proportions are better looking, even though they're not more accurate. The arms for both are kind of a wash. It comes down to nitty-gritty stuff that gives Fanstoys the edge here, but it's a fair win. That edge is fair. The pelvis should have been a place for Takara to take the lead because they do hide that joint. Fanstoys ends up looking better from the side. The legs in general are a mixed bag between the two, but consistently Takara does not have as much sculpted detail or anything that's really visually interesting aside from square on top of square. And this is not a category that's about what's more accurate. That category comes later. This is a category about what subjectively looks better. Fanstoys for the frontal and back edges them out, at least from the back, and then slaughters them in the front due to proportions. I don't think Takara is competing with Fanstoys in any way, shape, or form aesthetically between these two releases. I just don't. Articulation-wise, Fanstoys is on a hinge swivel. You get up a good bit, and you get the swivel, and you get a little bit down. Takara is on a double hinge swivel so that you can get up for the full range. It does look goofy, but you get it. You can look down far further, and it's believable. And you get the swivel, even though the tolerance is off. You do get it. Fanstoy shoulder gets you out to 90 degrees, ratcheted 360 around, no butterfly. Takara shoulder all the way up, all the way around, and a butterfly. Bicep swivel, bicep swivel. Single hinge elbow that gets you the full range. Single hinge elbow that gets you the full range. Wrist swivel and hinge in, out, plus the fingers are all spreadable on a hinge, plus at the base knuckle, secondary knuckle, and tertiary knuckle articulation, along with a ball peg thumb, a secondary knuckle, and a tertiary knuckle. Sorry, got this backward. And a tertiary knuckle. Wrist swivel, hinge in, out, secondary and primary knuckle, primary and secondary knuckle on the individual fingers as well, with no outward movement either. So Fanstoys takes that one. Nothing for the waist, nothing for the waist. Outward movement to there. Forward movement to there. Backward movement to there. Full range upward movement past 90 degrees. Limited backward movement. Full range out to the side to 90 degrees. Thigh swivel, thigh swivel. Single hinge knee that gets you 90 degrees. Single hinge knee that gets you past 90 degrees. Limited ankle tilt up. You get a toe tilt down. It's not really articulation though, is it? Toe tilt up would be. And a limited ankle rocker. And an ankle tilt down. Ankle tilt up. Ankle tilt down. You can extend this joint and get even further range. And a limited rocker, but a better rocker than the Fanstoys. So Fanstoys takes the hands. They have better articulated hands. Then the two of them tie at the waist because they have no articulation in the waist. They tie at the elbows because they're both actually done well. They tie at the wrists, surprisingly. Biceps and thighs for the appropriate swivels. And Takara takes the head articulation, the shoulder articulation, the hip articulation, the knee articulation, and the ankle articulation. This shouldn't come to any surprise to anyone. Takara should have had that waist swivel built in, but with the exception of that, I think we knew that they were going to take this. Moving on to scale, it's tricky, man. So here's the thing. The Datsuns should come up to about the top of the knee, and they do on both, because the legs are about the same size. Where the scaling gets different between these two is between the abdomen, at the pelvis line, and the top of the head. So even looking at Ironhide, for instance, according to the Zumbo scale chart, he's supposed to come to the top of the thigh, which is pretty much the same on both. The difference is where they make adjustments at the chest and torso. So if you really look at it, this one's gonna call for some nitty-gritty stuff. The thigh on the Fanstoys is slightly higher than the thigh on the Takara. But the Takara's head height is probably where the Fanstoys' head height should be. Because the proportions changed on the Fanstoys, he's sitting slightly taller. So scaling wise, they're both accurate in some ways, but Takara has it dialed in for the overall height better, giving the point to Takara. Transformation wise, this is an interesting one. Usually it's a knockout, right? Fanstoys always takes the loss. But in this one, Fanstoys' transformation is actually a pretty intuitive one. It's pretty straightforward. However, so is the Takara one. But I have to give the point to Takara because Takara does more interesting things. The flipping of the wings, the collapsing of the backpack is just more elegant, more thoughtful, and that's what is going to give them the point here. They just have a more thoughtful approach to doing it overall. But the Fanstoys one is not bad. Alt mode wise, once again, we're playing the game of aesthetics. And once again, Fanstoys takes the cake. It just looks more like a working jet. Even if it's a space jet, and we don't really know what one of those is supposed to look like, somehow it doesn't feel like the Takara one will actually work. It looks more suggestive. It doesn't look finished. It doesn't look like it was cooked long enough. Fanstoys looks like a proper jet. It's sleeker too, which takes a more divergent approach from the cartoon model, and once again, to its favor, ends up looking better. Fanstoys for the win. Cartoon accuracy, I don't think this one is any surprise to anyone that Takara takes it. And look, the easy answer here is just like, well, look how simple it is. It looks just like it. And that's the right answer also. But there's other little nuanced things, right? The size of the Autobot symbol, even though it's a repro label on the Fanstoys one, just the space that they allot for it, you have to give it to Takara. On top of that, it's the little things like the goofy looking hands on the Takara look more like the hands on the cartoon model. The flat colors, small little sculpt work inside of the calf. The overall proportions, while not perfect, are much closer. It just does a better job of trying to capture the cartoon model, and I would argue that as a result looks worse for it. Price wise, another category that Fanstoys isn't used to taking, ends up taking it here. The Takara Jetfire on BBTS is $268. Don't tell me about the site you bought it from. I don't care. I have to use some sort of standard between the two. This was the easiest one to find, and it's as valid as anything else. I'm not going to compare an early bird pre-order price on some website that gives you a coupon against a domestic website. Not gonna do it. Fanstoys came in at $220, which was expensive back then. Jetfire Takara comes in at $268, which I think is actually reasonable for what you're getting, given their recent releases, like if you look at their Starscream and so on and so forth. But still, Fanstoys takes the point. What a weird world we live in where Fanstoys takes the price point, huh?
Yeah. All right, we're not gonna be picking these up today, so all you have to do is point out which one you think looks better.
I think I'm gonna go with this one, but I like some things about that one too.
Okay. We're not going to pick these up today.
Yeah.
Just because they're unwieldy, but which one do you think looks better?
That one.
Me too. All right, which one looks better?
That one.
Okay, thank you. How old are you?
9, almost 10.
9, almost 10. All right. Which one do you think looks better?
This one.
This one over here? Mm-hmm. Okay. And how old are you?
I'm 6.
That makes sense.
So the results are pretty brutal, and I'll be the first to say that I got it way wrong because my expectations was it was going to be inverted. But I can't really deny the results, even though I do think that a lot of them are just by a hair, and a fair amount of it could be interpreted differently than I've done it. But they tie it build and materials because they're both built fairly well, better than most other third-party or masterpiece offerings, but not as well as Takara or Fanstoys have built other products in the past. And their materials are both solid on both. They both use die-cast, translucents, sturdy plastics, etc. They tied at the presence because my family was split 50-50. Fanstoys took the sculpt by a landslide. Surprisingly, alt mode, because I do feel like Takara most often has a really solid alt mode, and it takes the price, which is also not necessarily par for the course with that company. Takara takes the accessories by a landslide, gimmicks by a margin, a very small margin. Except, you know what? Takara does have the whole Gerwalk thing too, which is a gimmick. So, you know, I think it's fair. It takes the hardware only by a little bit, takes the articulation by a landslide, takes the paint, but I would tie them out if you were comparing this with the premium version of Pheonix. I would tie them out. So if that's what you have, just subtract 1 point from Takara. The scale, once again, I think this is one that's super up for interpretation, but it's the best way that I could interpret it. And the transformation is just a smarter process, and we have to agree that it's far more tune accurate. Which brings us to a final score of 8-3 Takara, which I can tell you breaks my heart to say. It's definitely not the ending I'd wish for, lad. But I'll say, I really think this comes down to your intention. If you want a tune-accurate Jetfire, you go Takara. And if you don't, then you go Fanstoys, and I'll be keeping my Fanstoys. But congrats to Takara for the win. And we'll take a look at a few of the breakdown matrix and see how they pan out that way as well. And that's that. And now I gotta get back to transforming this thing back to jet mode and hopefully not break it so that I can not break my 15 in a row streak. Make some noise for me. Pam, 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 pam. But so far, so good, right? 15 is the record for this year so far, so that's nice. Once again, just to reiterate, I would never buy this figure. I would never buy this Takara figure. I don't like the way it looks, right? How something looks is very important to me. I prefer the Fanstoys all day long, all day strong. But I can't deny that Takara has a lot to offer with its purchase, right? I can't deny that. And I think that if you're a tune aesthetic person, then you should buy this, right? Because it's far more tune aesthetically pleasing than the Fanstoys one. The Fanstoys one isn't trying to be tuned. So if that's your argument when I bash the tune stuff with Fanstoys, then you should sell your Fanstoys and get the Takara, because that's the right thing to do in this case. But you won't do it because you don't really mean what you say most of the time. Except for those that do. And by golly, you have my respect. So with that being said, I think we can go ahead and start wrapping it up. But before we do, I do want to go over the matrix real quick. The matrix of reviewership. So for display, we take into account build, sculpt, paint, and presence, which gives them a tie for best display option. For the best transformer, we take into account build, materials, and transformation, which gives the Takara the edge, and I think that's fair as well. But they tie at build and materials so that it only wins by 1. And for most playable, we take into account build, materials, articulation, transformation, and I'm also going to add accessories. We haven't had that in the past. This is a new thing, but I'm adding that into it. And for that, Takara takes the most playable. And I think that's true also. And it gives me a little bit of kind of able to sleep at night, that I think that the versus layout, like dynamics, do work. I think that the kind of criteria works well. And depending on what you wanted to do, I still agree. I personally agree with those options, even though I don't agree with the overall score. I think Fanstoys is a better piece. I do agree with how that breaks down. So what are you going to do? So with that being said, we're going to get out of here. I think I got dummies coming next week with a discussion about media and maybe another review, but I don't believe so. But we'll see. Time will tell. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.